everybody. Welcome back to the Beyond the Peloton podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Martin from the Beyond the Peloton newsletter. I'm here with my co-host, Andrew Vontz from the Choose the Hard Way podcast, thebetterlab.io, donating very generously time on a Sunday. I believe at some point, at some area in the world where you are, Andrew, it is Sunday afternoon. I have no sense of time and space anymore. I'm calling in from Nice, from the finish line of the Tour de France 2024 that Tadej Pogačar destroyed. We're going to talk about that, but do you want to plug the Better Lab really quick?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I want to say is, Spencer, it's great to be here with you on America's fastest growing independent pro cycling podcast. Thank you to our listeners for helping us to rocket up the charts. Big things ahead, big things. You know, we've got the live event coming up at SBT Gravel, probably on Thursday or Friday, because we know most of you will be taking the week off just to celebrate Gravel, and we'll be there. So there will be a bike ride. Hit me up at HardwayPod. Send me your email if you want to meet up with us at the event. And I would love if you would go check out the Better Lab. It's free now in the Apple App Store. Search for Better Lab in the Apple App Store. The Better Lab helps you to mindfully build science-backed practices to sleep better that stick. You know, I know, when you get good sleep, your bike ride feels better. You show up better as a parent. You do better at work. And the hardest part about getting good sleep is actually putting all of the science-backed information that makes it better into action, and that's what we help you do. So check us out, Better Lab in the Apple App Store, where you can go to thebetterlab.io to learn more. So Spencer, this is going to be a micro machine style episode. It's going to be short, sweet, hard to beat. I have so many thoughts about where we ended up with this race. Before we dive into the time trial, and I know we're probably going to do a deeper dive on the tour overall.
Yeah, we'll do a deeper dive
coming
later,
week, but
not today.
Yeah, but Saturday's stage, I just really enjoyed like the pure hate you could see between Enric Mas and Carapaz.
It's a completely like acting in the. You could do a game theory study on that breakaway. Like, if you both work together, one of you will win. If you do what you are doing by attacking each other, none of you will win. They chose the second option.
Yeah, that was intense. And then there was that moment with Matteo Jorgensen taking Carapaz's KOM points to spite him. I enjoyed that as well.
Someone texted me as that was happening. I had forgotten about this. Was that Movistar revenge? Like
right.
We remember the Alamo because Jorgensen was on Movistar, Carapaz left. Still, like, he left for money, and he said, "I'm leaving for money." I don't know. I respect someone's ability to do that. That seems fine in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know either. So we get here to the end of the tour. I'll throw out a couple of questions that we can answer the next time we meet to debrief on the tour. Was Egan Bernal ever a 7 watts per kilo rider? What would have happened had he not ridden into the back of a bus? How would Carapaz do if he had a team riding for him that was at the level of UAE or Visma Lease a Bike? Just think about these things. We'll come back to them. And what is Geraint Thomas doing without a mask on? And is his COVID, was it a hallucination? No one talked to him about it at the end of the race. He's just like, no mask, just spraying. What's going on?
I just stood mere 5 feet from the man, surrounded by more Welsh men and women that you could ever imagine. No mask, just hanging out, tons of people around him. I don't understand that at all. Like, what happened with the COVID? Pro cycling appears to be the only sport that cannot figure out how to not get COVID all the time. God, you threw out these meaty questions. I can't stop.
Well, we'll come back to them. Don't bite on the bait. That's kind of a tease. Everybody come back later. I'm going to refocus us. So I would say that the strangest thing I've seen today that made me really question reality was seeing Geraint Thomas, no mask, reporters, no mask. No one asked him one question about like, hey, how did having an active COVID infection impact your race? Or like, was it just like mild COVID? Were you asymptomatic? Nothing about that. It was just, hey, what is Ineos going to do to reconstruct the team? He got put on the spot pretty good following the race. Did not have a great answer. Said a couple of things I think he might regret later, and then tried to backpedal a little bit.
What did he say? Was this after today?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, again, these guys, they're completely destroyed. They're at the end of a 3-week race.
It's also not his job. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it kind of is his job. The guy has a whole podcast dedicated at times to having an opinion about what's happening with the construction and management of his team. So he definitely has some hot takes at times. He kind of started down this path of, we need to take a look at the coaching, our training, other teams are at another level. And it seems like we're not doing, for a while, we were ahead of everyone. Now the sport has passed us by. That was kind of his first answer. Then I think he realized this is probably not what I should be saying. So he paused and then he tried to walk it back a bit and made a statement. You can go watch the interview, but it's something along the lines of, however, what we do have is we have grit, we have determination, we have the things that you can't teach writers. And that's, you can buy or hire everything else. We'll get the new science, the new methodologies, but we have the core that we need to rebuild. So, good attempt at spin at the end of the answer, but wow, like Ineos set adrift, not on memory bliss. This is not a PM Dawn track. It's not the track that David Brailsford wanted playing in his head. Do you have any? Did he parachute into this tour at all?
I don't think so. I don't.
That would account for
he stepped down, so maybe he's not doing that anymore, and it's just all John Allert. I know he used to be based in Nice because he was running the football team here, but now, I mean, he should just be locked in a room in Manchester if he's truly trying to run that club and turn it around. Yeah. So I don't know. I was looking for him. It's funny you mentioned about Ineos. It looks like a ghost ship. Like they have the bus, they have the bikes, everything looks the same from the heyday. There's like no one ever there. It's just like, is the team on? What's happening? And then like Lotto Destiny, did we ever figure out what DSTNY is? Lotto Destiny was like a literal rave, like party. Like it was a legitimate party. I can just drop in music from the party right now.
A Lotto bus is definitely the most lively of them. You can hear it.
So now you know how big of a party it was. But
well, hold on. Were the riders partying?
Everyone. Yeah, riders. This is after the race, by the way. Like riders, +1s, +2s, +3s, +4, +5s. It was just tons of people in there smoking, drinking. Like they had a big bar out, like a spread. I was trying to get in there and get that spread. I was just right on the other side. I really wanted a 1664. It's like, will they notice if I grab this?
The charcuterie was on another level, I'm sure.
Yeah, it is really interesting to see the different teams' accoutrement after the stage. Like Lotto's got it down. If you're a really important team, you seem to be in a closed off area where no one could go. And like Biniam was up there because Biniam was the man of the day. Like definitely the most on the ground fans. It was like a rock star was there. Like that's how many fans they had to block off from his bus. But if you were in a less important team, you had to ride like through traffic. Like I have a photo of an FDJ rider, like just going on an open street. People are stopping him for selfies. Brian Cocard has like 5 pizzas and is riding them just through the street to the annex buses that are open to the public. And yeah, like Jayco just had a stack of pizza boxes like 10 feet high and riders could grab those. But it was fascinating to watch how every team was winding down from the race.
I don't know if you've had time to dive into everything. I'm sure you'll tell me if you have. I love the Pog post-race interview when
I did watch. Yeah, I did watch.
It was so good when he said, Matthew Van Der Poel looks pretty good in that World Championships jersey.
Yeah,
I think I'd like one of those.
What a killer!
Yeah, what a killer! Calling his shots.
Tour.
Calling his shots.
6 stages at the Giro, 6 stages of the Tour.
Yeah.
I was talking to Matt White, the GM of Jayco, about that. I'll put that audio in at the end of this episode. But we couldn't remember that ever happening. If anyone's ever done that, at least in the modern, like post-World War II era of cycling, like that's ridiculous. Maybe Freddie Martins, maybe Eddie Merckx. That's about it. He's talking about winning world titles. Like, what is going on with this man? And did you see him, like, you see this numbers thing he had going on when he was coming down the final straight? Is he like saying how many stage wins he was going to have? Like how many minutes he was going to win by? I couldn't quite figure that out. But we should say I guess the results of the stage. Stage 21, Monaco to Nice, Spoiler, everyone that's good at cycling and is not American lives in Monaco because you don't have to pay any taxes on your income. So these are home training roads for almost everybody. Tadej Pogačar wins, Jonas Vingegaard second, Remco Evenepoel third. That's the straight podium. Matteo Jorgensen fourth. Pretty good ride. Joao made it fifth. Jorgensen also lives in Nice, so these are home roads for him. Here's the headline, though. Tadej Pogačar wins by 1 minute and 3 seconds over Jonas. I was stunned by that. And I was partially stunned because at the top of the climb, top of the Col d'Ez, which is just about, let's say, that's like 12 minutes from the finish. It's all descent after that. Descent, maybe 4K along the Promenade d'Anglais in town into the finish. He was 24 seconds up on Jonas Vingegaard at the top of that climb. By the time he got to the finish, he's up by 1:03. That means he took, what is that, like 40 odd seconds on the descent? Like, that's incredible. Like, that shows you how fast he was going on a descent that he didn't have to go fast on just to run up the score on his opponents, I guess, in his home race. It was shocking. I think that's going to go unnoticed by a lot of people. Like, oh, Tadej won the Tour. But the guy was pushing it. He almost crashed, actually, pushing it down the descent on a time trial bike that he didn't need to. So that gives you a little peep into his mentality.
Yeah, and Spencer, something that the listeners of this podcast, again, America's fastest growing independent pro cycling analysis podcast, something they might not know is some of the extra mile efforts going on behind the scenes. I, of course, earlier today completed the main gravel series, Island Times North Atlantic Gravel Treaty Alliance ride. And then after that, I was up in Belfast, Maine for the Celtic Fest, where I saw the rolling of the cheese wheel. If you haven't attended one of those, you need to get out there. If you love competition, you need to watch.
These are ridiculous.
Yeah. So they roll a cheese wheel down a hill, and then they have different heats of people competing to get the cheese wheel. It looked like an orthopedic injury waiting to happen. A collarbone was broken in front of me. So it's people sprinting downhill and then fighting each other to grab the cheese wheel first. So that's what was going on here to prep for the podcast. And then I would just love if you could provide a bit of context about what the course was like today and what it might have been like for somebody to be out there in the skis on a TT bike based on your thrill ride on these surfaces on your road bike.
Yeah, I've spent the last few days studying every inch of this course, kind of by accident. I just keep going on rides, and then I'm like, oh, that road is blocked off. Let me go try to get on that closed road because that's fun to ride on if you're not in a race. And you climb out of Monaco. So like in Monaco, it's pretty technical, actually. Zip, 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 zip around town. Kind of an ugly city. It seems like, hey, let's just build a bunch of buildings so people can live here and not pay taxes. Somehow that works out financially for Monaco. If someone could explain that to me, that'd be fantastic. They climb up for the first 9K, I guess, and then it's a little descent, and then it's a steep climb, maybe 2K up to the top of Col d'Ez. And then it's a little bit of a plateau, fast descent, and then they kind of leave. They leave the road, the traditional Col d'Ez road, and they go like basically just down driveways for a little bit. They go to a highway that comes down through, I almost felt like pseudo Arizona private or like San Diego gated community road. So you actually do have some speed going through there, drop down Port of Nice, and then Promenade d'Anglais, which is fat. That's a fast straight road. So you want to be in the skis there into the finish. I rode it and thought, there's no way you can do this on anything but a road bike because the descents are not easy. Also, I thought, 9K climb at 6%. That's pretty hard. Probably want a road bike. But I didn't quite appreciate those at the speeds they're going, being in the aero position, even at like 8, 9, like Remco was in the skis until like 10%, and then he would stand up. And I guess if you're going to 30K an hour on 6%, it is helpful to be in that position. Patrick Bro on his podcast today on Lantern Rouge thought maybe the math nerds at these teams aren't thinking about this correctly, and a road bike with clip-ons would actually be the faster way to do it. I completely agree with them because on the descent, there are pedaling areas of parts of the descent where you're going high speeds, but you could just do that, in extensions on your road bike, and you're probably going pretty fast. You're going to be a lot quicker in the corners. I'd say even faster, like on the, intra-city or inner city parts of the course, and then probably better on the climbs as well. You're going to have a much lighter bike. So I was surprised more riders didn't do that. I think that's what Vanderpool did. I think Ciccone did that. And then you saw some guys with bike changes like Felix Gall, Ciccone, and they're kind of slow bike changes. I didn't totally understand that. But I thought it was a technical course. I mean, you ride it. If you watch this, like Col d'Ez, you're like, well, I don't know that's a 20-minute time trial in Paris-Nice. How big can that climb be? You're not understanding that you're doing it in like 40 to 50 to 60 minutes. Like you would do Col d'Ez and think, well, that must be one of the biggest climbs they do in the Tour. But no, they just go so fast on it. It makes it look not like a hard climb. But they just went up and over a mountain from between Monaco and Nice to get into Nice to finish the race. I can't believe they did it on their time trial bikes, but clearly they thought the math told them to do that. And I guess at the high speeds they're going both on the ascents and descents, it must work out where that's an advantage.
And Spencer, how did you feel to see Cavendish end his career in a trapezoid space helmet when he could have just, yeah.
He did say he was worried about missing the time cut. So
okay.
Maybe he was taking
that's
all
right, that's fair.
Checking every box on that descent on the high speed part. So I did think that was a little strange when I saw that, but it would stink to be time cut on the final day.
Yeah, but they would do it. They would do it.
They would do it. Ruthless. Sorry, Cav. No gifts. But to throw it back in your court, like I was thinking about you all day, like beautiful setting, like one of the most photogenic ends of a Grand Tour I've ever seen. When first of all, I show up, I'm like, I can't wait to see the finish line. Like stage 7, that was an amazing finish line experience for the time trial. Completely blocked off. You cannot get in unless you've purchased some ticket. I did not know that ASO was selling tickets. Like, isn't it always like, oh, we might sell tickets on summit finishes and everyone freaks out? Little did I know they're already selling tickets to finish lines of races. I don't know where you purchase these tickets or how that happens. Maybe we could figure that out at some point. But, and I'm like, I'm pretty into cycling. If I don't know you can do that, how many people know that? Like, I was quite taken aback by this. So finish line was out, couldn't get in there, couldn't see it. Go to the team bus. I'm watching the race. Visma has a big screen outside the bus. You can watch there. As a very smart pizzeria set up a big screen right at the team buses where you could sit and eat their pizza and watch the race. It was fantastic, actually. But I was thinking, God, this looks great. What if this was a road race? Like it is felt a little anticlimactic that it was a time trial. And you were in my head all day. I was like, God, this is kind of a lame way to finish it for the riders and the fans, because for most of the race, it's just like inconsequential. Like Matthew Vanderpool, I saw the guy ride by, one of the best of all time. And it's just like, oh yeah, he's not riding for anything. He's on a bike ride. He's training. I watched him train. Like it does kind of like sap a little bit of the excitement.
Yeah. And just thinking back to Glasgow Worlds, I think it was one of my favorite races ever. I think it was one of your favorite races ever. I want to see more city center circuit races. And I know that, we've seen those pop up in the Giro in the past. I'd like to see something like that go down at the Tour. Like, I think that would have been a more fun viewing experience to end the race today.
It would have been so fun. I mean, there's such good terrain. You don't want to. The Giro's tried to do it sometimes, and it's been nixed. If you remember it was the Dumoulin year. No, the Froome year where he came back. I think that was 18. They had a city center race in Milan, maybe, and the riders were like, yeah, we're not going to ride this. It's too dangerous. So they just did like a parade. But, you could do a Paris-Nice style. The last stage of Paris-Nice is fantastic. You could just do that for the Tour. I don't know. I thought that would have been fun. But here's another question for you. I thought it went well. It's pretty intense. Paris is a big city. Newsflash, everyone, Paris, big city. It kind of absorbs the Tour, plenty of room, but the city doesn't really pop. There's you wouldn't know you're at a big bike race. Nice, it was popping. Like it dominated the city, very compact. Kind of got me thinking, this is a bit of you might call a smashing success. Is ASO going to start? And I assume Nice paid a pretty penny for this to have 3 stages here. Are they going to start saying, maybe we could auction off not only the Grand Depot, but the Grand Arrivée, and it starts moving around? Like, was this them dipping their toes in the water of selling off the final weekend of the Tour?
Yeah, it could be. And what you described about this pay-to-play finish line experience, that you were not able to access. I have to assume that this requires a subscription on top of a subscription on top of a subscription. So it's kind of like getting BNR Sports in HBO. I think it's a package like that. So it's probably it's more of a tier 3 subscription that you just weren't aware of. You couldn't navigate your way to it in the ASO access packages, but perhaps next year.
Yeah, there's like all these Eritreans like trying to climb up to like see through. I'm like, that's good. We're keeping these fanatics out of the race. We don't want them around the tour. Who wants people that are interested in cycling? Let's wall it off. Like I don't know. I grew up in Nice. The tour came to my town. I didn't see it. I just saw big walls around it, and that was that. I gave up my interest in cycling.
And people in spaceship helmets.
Yes, and I didn't love cycling because I could not understand why they were wearing such things. Other observations, other questions I'm trying to think of, other than the fact that I'm still shocked at Pogačar ripping down the climb at this rate. But Jonas actually has looked fantastic, I'd say, except for that wobble at Isola 2000. That even wasn't really a big wobble because he lost no time to Remco Evenepoel. Physically, he's looked quite good. But I do think you hinted at something many months ago. If he came back, when he came back, would his descending be at the level it used to be? I think we now have a data set, and I'm not blaming him at all. I wouldn't even be on my bike. I wouldn't even be going downhill. But his descending is not what it was before the crash. I think that's pretty clear. This is the second time trial that he's lost massive time on the descent portion of it, and then in the road stages, at least before the Pogačar explosion in the Pyrenees, he was only losing time really on the downhills.
Yeah, Spencer, I don't know if you had this thought when you watched Saturday's stage, just so scenic. And as the roads, the descents in particular, wrap their ways down the valley, hugging the mountainside with precipitous drops off of the side, I thought this is scenic. This is beautiful. I'm glad to be looking at this. And then I also thought this kind of looks like a Wile E. Coyote cartoon. And I could just imagine people flying off the side of the road to their deaths, unfortunately. It just looked like really fraught terrain.
Wait, which stage was this?
Yesterday. The descents.
Yeah. Very fraught terrain. That is what a lot of the descents are like here, where you're like, ooh, I'm looking over the edge of the road and it's a 2,000-foot drop there. I guess that's just how they roll in the south of France. I was also taken aback by that. Thought it was quite aggressive, but I was surprised. I mean, Nice is a city. I said this in the last podcast, like a city. You're riding, you're thinking, this is kind of like crummy riding. This is like LA. You hit the sign within 3K. You hit a sign. You're leaving Nice, and you don't see anyone. You're just like off in the hinterlands. And then this yesterday's stage where they started in the middle of town and then went up into those mountains, it was quite magical. The mountains they were in, that's not an area we see a lot in the tour. It kind of made me wanted to like come back and do an even bigger cycling trip in the area. Like I was unaware that they had that type of terrain just right outside the city. And then you go directly from the mountains, from the ocean, like straight up into the Alps. It was quite stunning actually to see where they finished versus where they started.
You could do that, or you could go to the global epicenter of cycling in Northwest Arkansas. So flip the coin and decide which place.
One trip is more expensive than the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, Spencer, we should probably wrap it up here. I have to go complete the process of feeding my children. And I know you've got a newsletter to get out, but this has been fun. Thanks again, everyone, for helping the Beyond the Peloton podcast become America's fastest growing independent professional cycling podcast. Remember, sleep is free. It amplifies everything that's great about your health, wellness, and performance. So please check out the Better Lab in the Apple App Store. You can download it for free, and I'd love to hear your feedback. You can reach me at HardwayPod on Instagram, which is always the best way to communicate.
And then look in the show notes for our legal definition of how we define independent cycling analysis podcast in the United States. And then we will go into my conversation with Matt White, director at Jayco-Alula, right now.
Well, Matt, how would you rate your guys' tour? You got the stage win. Did you get a little bit of COVID in the team? Some sickness, perhaps? How are you coming away from this race?
Yeah, look, every Tour de France is a journey, isn't it? And when you start off the race, you have certain plans, certain goals. Some things you can control, and some things you can't. And yeah, we had some problems with illness during the race there, which means we had to change our plan pretty early on. We came in here with the idea of supporting Simon for general classification, and then winning stages with Dylan. Unfortunately, due to illness, we had to reset and recalibrate Simon's goals. And we got a nice stage win with Dylan, and then Simon this last week has been very strong. That's the level that we knew he would be at coming in, and it's unfortunately for him, and fortunate for us that he got a bit sick there from that early on in the race. But everyone wants to come away with a stage win here, and we got that. But we're never content, and you're always looking for more.
Well, a theory I was thinking about last night is we saw like Enric Mas, Richard Carapaz, Simon Yates, like up front competing for these stage wins, whereas like Santiago Buitrago, maybe the best race of his life, but you haven't seen him at all. Like, is there an internal calculation going on with you guys where you think, well, if Tadej Pogačar is going to win every GC mountain stage, is it better value for our sponsors if we're not even going for the GC and we're just up there competing for KOM jerseys, mountain stage wins? Like that's, if one guy is going to win every mountain stage from here on out, does that change that calculus at all?
Well, I suppose going into the race, you always anything can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Imagine if the Tour de France where Tadej was involved in an incident the first or second day. Imagine it would have been a totally different bike race. So you've got to come in backing your leaders, and look, you've always got that fallback plan that if something does happen, and that's what I think when you come with a roster where it's purely GC and something goes wrong, that's hard.
Yeah,
that's hard. And when we came in here, we didn't come here to win the Tour de France, but we came here to try to give Simon the best chance to arrive on the podium. We understood clearly. Obviously, no one really knew how the young Dane was going to be here. He didn't race between the accident, between the accident in Pays Basque and now, but we had a pretty good suspicion that they're not going to send him here unless he was ready to box on and race. and he wasn't he? So when you look at the preparation that he had and to be so competitive, I think it's chapeau to him. And then we saw Tadej was just incredible. We'll know in an hour or so whether he's going to win 6 stages in the Giro and 6 stages in the Tour de France, but it's been a long time. If I can't remember anyone who's done that, dominated both Grand Tours in such a short period.
Yeah, I don't think it's sunk into people how incredible that is. As you say, I can't think of anyone that's ever done that. Jonas, you knew he was hurt. You knew he's coming to the tour. Like, do you just kind of assume that he's going to be good, or are you actually like sending people out to try to figure out, like, is this guy fit? Or are you having people watch his training climbs? Like, is there any type of fact find?
We really just worry about getting our own guys prepared for the Tour de France. But you just got to think a team like Jumbo. 3 or 4 weeks out from the Tour de France had a few options, and unfortunately, they lost a couple of guys at the Dauphiné. Then they lost Sepp Kuss, and so they actually, towards the end, had to scramble to put a team together because losing 3 Van Baal, they lost 3 of their Tour de France riders in the last 3 weeks before the tour, and key guys. But if he was really badly injured and wasn't at a really good shape to come here, then you would have thought that, well, why not go to the Vuelta and dominate the Vuelta? So if he's on the start line here, we were thinking that he's ready to play, and he certainly was. He's had, from that turnaround from such a harsh crash in Pays Basque to the level that he's at now, that's not an easy task. Not an easy task at all.
No, it's ridiculous. I actually can't quite wrap my head around it. It is wild to think Bart Lemon, you're saying they're running out of riders. They drafted in Bart Lemon, who I believe was on a 3rd division team last year, and then performed incredibly well for them. How does your recruiting process look? Like, how do you think Visma even came across this guy that was, on the outside looking in the top level of the pros, and then suddenly they draft him in and he's one of their best riders of the tour?
Yeah, look, I had heard he came from, I think he was in the military, I think.
Yeah, he was like a fighter pilot.
Yeah, he was in the military, and then he was racing with Health United, Human Powered Health, when they folded, and he came on the market, and I think he was a late pickup from those guys as well. So they picked up well, and a guy to come into your first Tour de France in a team like that with not too much or no Grand Tour experience, he's performed very well. But recruiting, well, we could spend a long time talking about recruiting. and how it's changed over the last 3-4 years, really. Now, if you'd asked me 5 years ago, was I looking at junior results?
Yeah.
The answer was no, to be honest. We were looking at maybe the best under 23s in the world. And now it's not like football or soccer where, people are signing young kids at a very young age and getting in their system or in their club. But it's going that way. It's going that way. Nearly every team has a direct connection or their own under 23 team. And I think in the not too distant future, people will have connections, if not their own junior teams. And so, because if you don't do it, someone else will do it, and then the chance of getting that talent is less, because when you're buying guys off other teams or you're buying from other riders who aren't in those teams, well, also the contracts are changing. So some teams are locking riders in long term to their development teams. So it keeps other teams away from them as well, So the market has changed, and it's changed quickly. And I think it'll continue to evolve over the next couple of years. Where, I don't know where it'll stop. How younger riders people were signing.
Well, it's family time here at the bus. You might want to start getting some of these little babies on the ergo and see what their numbers are.
It's not crazy. I think it's just the evolution of our sport. It's our sport's different than it was 5 years ago, different than it was 10 years ago, and it'll be different again in another 5. And it happens in other sports, and it's just happened very quickly in cycling.
Well, my last question: I don't know your budget, but I assume it's not at the same level as Ineos, Visma. How do you guys compete? I mean, you're coming away with a Tour stage win. I believe 10 or 11 teams didn't win a stage of this race. How do you continue to compete and punch at such a high level with a limited budget?
Yeah, look, the business model of cycling hasn't changed, and whatever money you've got to spend in the most efficient way. And I think if you haven't got money to burn, then you've got to invest in money in a sensible way with your recruiting, with your development, with your target riders of what do you think your team is capable of doing, and going after that, putting more eggs in certain baskets than others because you think that that's going to guarantee a stage win at the Tour de France or a podium at a Grand Tour, and be realistic and be realistic as well. When you look at the start line here, not too many people were probably thinking that more than Jonas or Tadej or Remco were capable of winning this tour. There's a couple of tiers, and Simon is in that tier of riders who Simon, Adam, all those guys who on their best days could have arrived on the podium like we saw last year. Adam was third, Simon was fourth. And you can't control the madness of the first week of the tour either. You might come in as one of those guys fighting 5th to 10th, and all of a sudden three big stars are on the deck or gone home, and all of a sudden the race opens up and you've got different opportunities. So you've got to be positive, you've got to be realistic, and spend your money wisely.
Well, thanks so much, and enjoy your pizza, your well-earned pizza and beer. Is it weird not being in Paris? It's kind of an odd...
Not weird, but it is different. It is different because the only time I've been to Nice is in March, and it's a tad warmer here than it is in the end of Paris-Nice. But it's something different. I can't remember the last time that it hasn't finished on the Champs-Élysées. Someone told me 1975 was the last time.
Yeah, I heard that too, but I don't know where it finished, like the outskirts.
Yeah, I think it was somewhere in Paris.
Yeah.
But on the Champs-Élysées, it's been a long, long time, which, it's one of the most iconic finishes in world sport. But no, it's great to take the tour out somewhere different. And obviously with the Olympics starting any day now, it's a big ask to put on the world's biggest annual sporting event, the Tour de France, on at the same time as the Olympic Games. So I dare say we'll be back finishing on the Champs-Élysées next year. But it's been a tour that it's been a memorable one on a few fronts, and every team, every rider's got their story to tell from the last 3 weeks.
Well, thanks so much for your time, and congratulations on the stage win. That's no small feat, considering a lot of teams didn't even sniff one.
Thank you.